forget that they call this thing the Swift Sport. It may as well be called the Swift GTI. Sure, you've got to factor in that this one has a turbocharged engine and an automatic transmission, and it's about as big as a morbidly obese Swift from the 1990s. But when it comes to fast, fun, affordable hatchbacks, this thing is pretty good. Let's set the scene here. The new Swift Sport has a 1.4 litre turbocharged petrol with 103 kilowatts of power and 230 newton meters of torque. And because it's turbocharged, the new generation model has a huge 70 newtons more than the existing one. Obviously that engine with 103 kilowatts and 230 newton meters doesn't really scream power, but this thing's light, and that's the point of it. 970 kilos for the manual, 990 kilos for the auto. It all translates to a very, very good torque to weight ratio, which is all important in a turbocharged car. One with a very, very different character to the car that came before it, particularly with the automatic transmission. It hangs on really well in these corners. Sure, there's a bit of understeer, as you can expect from a front-wheel drive hatchback, but I'm really impressed with the steering feel. I'm really impressed with the way that it's controlling the body through corners, and I'm also impressed by this 6-speed automatic transmission. Sure, a manual will give you a more pure driving experience, and yeah, you might find that after a few laps, the disc brakes might start to fade a little bit, or you might want a little bit more tyre, but it's not a race car. We just happen to be driving it on a racetrack. Obviously the automatic has paddle shifters. What automatic these days doesn't? I'm leaving it mostly to its own devices. It is in a manual mode, but that's basically just a sport mode for the transmission. One thing you might find a little bit frustrating about the automatic transmission is that it can deny you a downshift when you're trying to slow down, which can be a little bit annoying, particularly in manual mode. You should have full control in manual mode. But obviously there's a computer in there that says, nah, you might wreck the gearbox if you do that. And the shifts themselves are quite smooth, but also quite decisive. They make you feel like you've got confidence in what's happening at the front axle, which is really good. There's nice telemetry in front of the driver, including a little boost gauge, and one of the other things that's impressed me during my track time here is the leniency of the traction control system. It doesn't try and rein you in, which is enjoyable for someone who likes to push their hot hatch a little bit more than usual. But a lot of that comes down to the balance of this thing. It is really, really well balanced, and the suspension has a huge part to play in that. McPherson's at the front, a torsion beam at the rear, but it still manages to do an excellent job of sorting this thing out when it comes to corners. Now, while I would love to be able to tell you what it's like to drive on the regular road, we're not getting a chance to do that today. But let me go into the pits and maybe we can look through some of the finer details. As you might expect, it feels like a sportier version of the regular Swift. You get a bunch of different elements though that make it feel special, like red stitching on the seats and on the steering wheel, and there's red panel sections on the dashboard and down here and on the doors. It really does add a little bit of flair to this otherwise maybe a little bit cheap feeling, maybe a little bit austere cabin. You still get the same old 7-inch touchscreen media system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and there's still no volume knob, which could be annoying for some people. And while some of the plastics up front are a little bit cheap feeling, the seat position and the seat comfort is excellent. Rear seat space is adequate, but not necessarily excellent. Knee room is a little bit tight for bigger people like myself. I'm 6 foot tall, but headroom is surprisingly pretty good. If you have little children, you'll be happy to learn that there are dual ISOFIX attachment points in the back seat. There's 2 on this side and 2 on this side, plus top tether attachments as well. But there are no fold down cup holders or anything like that. You do get bottle holders in the doors, and there's no rear air vents at all, and only one mat pocket. Boot space might be an issue for parents. There's 265 litres, which is 55 litres bigger than before, but still pretty small. Maybe not big enough to fit a pram. But you're not buying this car if you want the ultimate in practicality. You're buying it for its performance, presumably. And performance is where the Swift Sport shines, probably enough to have warranted the GTI badge return, but that's not the case. We'd love to tell you what it's like to drive on the road, but we haven't had a chance to do that this time around. This is a launch after all. Stay tuned for our full, more detailed review coming soon.